Okay, so the next thing we need to do is to put a texture on our little strand of hair. We're actually going to make two different types of texture, one for what I would call the lock of hair and one for the actual head of hair. So let's concentrate on this lock of hair first. So I'll just do this using a UV snapshot. So UV snapshot, I'll browse now. My by default puts UV snapshots into the images folder. I find it a little bit easier if I put them into the source folder, because that's where eventually it's going to come back in again. And I'll call it hair lock, actually, because my naming protocol, just name what it is first, and then if there's different versions of it, they'll find them all together. So I'll say hair lock text and save that. I'm going to save as a TIFF. I've had problems saving as a Photoshop document. I don't know if it's a Mac thing, but it wasn't saving out. Eventually I'm going to turn this into a Photoshop. I'll click OK, and that's all done. So if I go over into Photoshop now, and what I'm going to do is I already have a photograph set up here, which I'm going to use for reference. And I go to my source images here, hair lock texture reference. Now what I'm going to do is normally what I would do is I would use this as a reference, but it's just going to be a square. But what I was going to say was, let me just do it here. Double click on the background, go to image, adjustments, invert. Okay, and then I'm going to drag this image over, go to my move tool, drag it over to here, and drop this one on top, which at the moment I can't see anything, but if I change the blend mode to multiply, and then what I need to do is just lock that layer, otherwise it keeps selecting. And then I've got this as a reference. Like now, as I say, in this particular example, it's not really necessary, but generally when I'm working with UV maps in Photoshop, this is a nice way of doing it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a little sample of the hair and basically expand it out into this square. Now it might seem a bit strange doing that, but you'll see that it will actually just sort of stretch out rather quite nicely here. So let's I'd like it to be a little bit wider, so let's just bring it from there. I go to select, transform selection, and I can always change this, and let's try something like this. We'll just experiment, see how it goes. It's a little bit, that looks a bit better. So I'm going to then just check that selection, right click on it and say layer via copy. Select the right layer first, of course, and layer via copy, switch off the original. That's my hair texture, and expand it out. Doesn't matter about keeping it proportional. You might want to go to window view, snap to document bounds. So then that will help me so now you see it's just snapping there. Pull that one up, pull this down, pull this one across, and let's just switch off that layer. And it's a bit weird, it's gone a bit blurry at the end. Well, let's see what happens with this one. So I'm going to say file save as Photoshop document, and click OK to that, and go back into Maya and select this piece of hair, Now I've already assigned a new material to this. In fact, this is an old. Let's just break these connections because this is what I've done before. Okay, so back to our. I go to my colour. I choose PSD. Click on here, and I just go to my source images here. Hit 6 on the keyboard. You see, actually, this texture is also applied on the back here as well. That end bit, I don't think it's going to be a problem because I'm going to. So you see, once it's stretched out, it doesn't look distorted. Maybe the hair looks slightly thick, but so it works quite nicely. What we want to do now, though, is introduce a little bit of a irregularity to this, because at the moment we've got very straight edges around the hair. So what I'm going to do is first of all going to open up Photoshop. That's a good idea, and I'm going to apply a layer mask to this. So click on the bottom for a layer mask. Go and get a paintbrush. You need to be working black and white, although once you click on the mask that will automatically do that. And I'm just going to start to cut out kind of a very freestyle kind of shape here. Maybe a little bit more at the end here. Doesn't matter too much at the moment. This is just going to be a rough selection here. And using a mask, of course, I can just go back in and add some details here. Now to export this, what I just need to do here is just switch on the layer mask here and hit save, and then hopefully in Maya here, when I reload this, you see that it is now automatically loaded in my transparency channel here. So what we see now is, well, we see some sort of difference with the hair. I can see the way it's been cut out, but I can also see that there's no transparency there. So what I need to do is I just click through on the transparency, or I could do it on the colour as well. Here it says alpha to use, and I want to use alpha here, or is it transparency? That's the one I want to use. You'll notice that we've still got an issue that although I can see through now, I'm still getting this reflection. This is to do with the specular ray, so eventually what I need to do is create a specular channel that will cut out the reflection on the transparent parts. So in other words, as it stands, I'll still see the transparent parts. It will look like a piece of plastic, see-through plastic, but we'll deal with that once we've finished with our specular map here. But you can see already, in fact, if you want to see this a little bit clearer, you just go down onto your texture. This one, actually, go back to the material, and under the specular colour here, if you just set that down to 0, then you'll see the true transparency there. And already you can see, although I just did a rough line, that's enough just to break up the contours of it there, and now it looks a little bit more interesting. Now I just want to be able to see the end of this one, so what I'll do is I'll just select these faces, go to my rotate tool, hit D and V, snap up to here, and just rotate this one up. Like so. And I can see what's going on the end here as well. Because on the end we want the hair to be, you can sort of see it there, I want it to be sort of long, thin strands. And at the front I want it just to be short, little breaking up the edge here. So if I go back to Photoshop here, and on this side, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my paintbrush here. I'm going to choose white now to start painting it back in. I'm going to make my brush a little bit smaller. And I mean, it doesn't really matter how you do this, but I'm going to do it painting it back in. So I'm going to start to just break up this line a little bit. So I would do that around there, and I might want to put in some more there, but then if I just hit X here, I can then just reverse the process and start to just lock in some longer strands here. So what I'll do is I'll just pause and then just work in some of these lines, maybe some smaller ones. And okay, so I scribbled out some of the lines here, slightly longer at the back. Just make sure you don't end up sort of cutting off pieces of hair so they're sort of not attached to anything. And I'll just put some lines in around the edges here. That helps. So if I go back to Maya here, you can see now that the roots of the hair now a little bit more broken up, and at the end here, well, if I expand this, then you'll also see that I've got quite a lot of transparency now on the back. So if I squash it up, as I pull it out, and this is a nice thing, you see, as I pull it out, the hair, I can bring it together, and it will goes quite nicely there. We need to do a few other things to this hair first of all before we just copy paste this all over the head, and that's we need to have a bump map, and we need to have a specular map for the highlighting, and I think that was it really, just those two. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, for my bump map here, I'm going to make a copy of this layer, which I already have done actually here. This is a copy. And let's just switch that one off so I'm not getting confused by different things. This one I'm going to take the colour out of it. So I'll say image adjustments and just desaturate it. And then to add to that, I'm going to put in some noise, and that looks sort of about right really. You can mess around with this, but that'll be fine for now. Then I'm going to go back to my filter and say blur and use motion blur, and I've got it here already set at 0 angles, so it's going to push it in this direction, and that looks okay. Now what I'm going to do is just underneath this layer I'm going to put in another layer, and I'm going to fill that with a light grey. So let's just use that mid-tone grey here. So Alt backspace, I can fill that. Now the idea here is that I can go back now and try out my bump map, and I can just simply play around with the opacity here to bring it up or down. I can also do this in Maya as well by bringing it down, but let's just say we'll bring it down to sort of 30% here, because the bump maps are usually pretty subtle little things here. I'll say file save as, and call it block text bump. Actually, I'll just make this into a normal JPEG. No, I'll leave it as it is. Save that one. Click OK. Go back over to Maya here. Click on the block of hair. Material attributes. PSD. And get my PSD here. Let's just do a little render, see what they're getting. Not sure if you're not sure if you're getting an effect or not, because I can't really see on that. That doesn't look like. What it's actually better to do is if I just break the connection with the colour. Yeah, that's okay. Let's just break the connection with the colour there. Right, now I can actually see what it's doing. You can see that there is texture on that. and I think it looks like it could be increased a little bit. So let's just go through on my bump. I'll just undo my break in the colour there, and then click through again, go to my bump, just click back and you get to the bump here. Let's just put that up to 5 and see what that looks like. Yeah, I think that looks better. You can definitely see, especially down here, you can see now that the strands of hair are a lot better. But this is something you need to experiment with, because it's also to do with lighting, because everything can look a little bit different. So something like that for a bump mat, or you can sort of hand draw it in, depending. Of course, these techniques are dependent on styles of hair as well. You've got hair hanging over the face, then this transparency becomes more obvious. Then I want to create this specular channel, and I can simply do that by, let's just switch all of these off and go and click on my mask here, and I'm going to make a new little layer here, and I'm simply going to say fill that area with that mid-tone grey. Invert my selection, hit X to flip the swatches here, hold backspace and just deselect, and I'm going to save as specular. Come back into Maya, go back to the material attributes, go down to specular colour, it's a PSD again, and get it loaded in, and now you can see it's a lot brighter, and the bump map is picking up better now, because we're getting the bump map will react to a highlight here. So this is just a very quick rough one here, but you get the general idea. You can see now with the specular channel that I'm not actually it's not shining on the bits that it shouldn't do. I've got the proper transparency. You need to make sure that you're using ray tracing when you're doing this. For the actual underneath of the hair, we don't really need to do anything. We can just use this texture, because this is really just to fill in all the gaps. So what I would do with that one is then simply come down to here. I can switch off, right click on the layer mask, say disable layer mask, and what I might want to do is I've got a little bit of a weird thing going on here, so I might actually just stretch this one out a little bit. Let's see if I can pull this over. Sometimes it just sort of, no, that will do it. Okay, right, so something like that, and maybe make it a little bit darker, or I can go to something like shadows and highlights. It's quite a nice one for darkening something up with a, although if I wanted to get rid of the highlights, really, that's a little bit better. And I've got a whole load more options down here as well, so I think that's fine for now. This is a little bit darker, it's actually quite red now, and I'll save that, and I'll just save this as a PNG, and I'll call it hair base colour. Click OK to that, go back to my model here. I've already got a texture applied to it here, so let's just bring in this colour, and it's just a normal file now, so, and there's my hair base colour. do a quick little render now. Now you can see it's actually quite sort of milky. That's because of the specular value here. If I bring down the specular value, in fact let's just bring down, see what happens when we bring the diffuse down. No, that's a little bit too much. Let's just do a little render area here. What did I do here? I said diffuse needs to come back up again. Specular colour, let's just bring that out. Okay, that's a little bit more like the colour that I was looking for here. So this is just going to be the base, and then really what you want to do is just start duplicating these locks of hair. You might even want to create sort of more individual custom ones. For instance, on the back here you might want to change it. I need a bump map as well for the hair. Well, the bump map I can actually use the same one, and then generally just building up the hair here so it's then all over the head. So I'll just be duplicating these, moving them across and repositioning the points, so then I get a nice block of hair here. Okay, so then that's just the hard work now of just putting them all together. Okay. Just a footnote to this tutorial, as I've been duplicating the hair and moving it around, I've come to realise that in actual fact I need a little piece of more geometry in the strands of hair, so I've just inserted an edge loop down the centre. Technically I shouldn't do this because of the UV map, but because it's a very simple UV map, you shouldn't have a problem with it. If I select this one here, and I'll just say show, isolate, select here. That's not what I was planning. There we go, show, isolate, is selected. So you want to just check, if I do shift right click I can say insert edge loop, and as I cut just have a look to see what happens with the texture. You see there's a slight change, it sort of straightens up a little bit, but that would be fine. And just putting in this extra little cut, which of course now I think about doing before I model this, it just allows me to create more body and make the hair look a little bit less angular. I can create more of a curved shape around it here, and it will break up the light as well, so when the light falls on it, even if it's in a low polygon state like this, it's not going to look quite so faceted. So that was one thing. The other thing is that pulling these down to the hairline, I tried a few different techniques, and what I ended up doing was simply I needed to bring these down to the hairline, because if I do a little render here, you see this is one of the key parts for my hair, is creating this line here. So you see I need to do a little bit of corrections here, but this is going to make the hair more believable. So I'm the join between the skin and then the hair coming off over here, and you can see as I'm moving the hair around, I'm beginning to see more of the bump map. Anyway, after a few little trials and errors here, what I did was I stick my hair onto a layer here. So let's just switch off that one for a second and go to object mode and just drag over that lot, make a new layer, double click on it, call it hair, and then switch that one off, and then you'll see that what I've done is I've just simply cut lines into my model here, which I'm using to snap the points to, and then simply when I've done that is I'll just get rid of these lines again. So it's just a temporary little marker I've placed onto the model there. I find sort of you can change move tool to face and all sorts of things, but this seems to be the quickest way. Just remember you've got those lines and then place them back, and then I can snap my points onto this line here. So I really have a lot more control over where my hairline is going here. So for instance, on the side here, I'd like to also put in one of these edge loops. So it's just this edge loop, and I can see here is my hairline. So I have this one here, and let's just double it up with this. So if I just simply go to vertex mode here, and I can just move this one up. In actual fact, I can probably just snap it up to here. And let's pull some of these up. Let's just double up on the hair a bit on the side here and pull it out a little bit. And you see now these points are just allowing me to create the hairline here. I might have to, even want to add more. Let's have a look. Let's see if that's clear that a little bit more. So yeah, that's now beginning to break up the hairline there a little bit. And now I've got an extra bit of geometry here. I can also bring these down to get that feeling that the hair is coming in over the ear here. Again, you might want to go into a side view. And I can see here I need to pull this one back a little bit. It's okay, let's just pull these all back and actually sort of follow this line here. Anyway, that was the two little things that I found you might find useful. So just drawing in a line you want to snap to, and also just splitting up the geometry. And one last thing is you might also want to consider changing the actual material from a blim to anisotropic, because that's going to be more suited to the nature of hair. So if I just say that's my blim, and now I do anisotropic, and you'll see it's picking up on the highlights a lot more here now. So if I just, so that's blim and then anisotropic, so depending on it's also a little bit unforgiving on some of the polygon shapes there, but it's kind of more of a natural highlight there on the hair.